We're back today with another build guide video for Last Epoch. This video will be the first in a new series where we look at different endgame builds that are available in the game. We start off with possibly my favourite endgame build. It's a nice lazy one. It's the SPIN2WIN Echo Void Knight. There is a levelling guide on the channel for this, so if you've not yet levelled your Void Knight, you'll want to check that out. Another video that will be relevant to this is how to auto cast skills, because if we do have one skill, we will be auto casting with this setup as well. But yeah, it's an endgame build we're showing off. When it comes to the endgame builds on the channel, they will all be able to comfortably do a minimum of 200 corruption. 200 corruption is important because it's at that point all of your drops in the game can then start to drop. There is a threshold for certain drops that won't drop before that. So yeah, these will be able to comfortably do 200 corruption and more. Now let's go in. We'll start off with a breakdown of the build first. The build then, as mentioned, is a SPIN2WIN Echo Void Knight. With this, we will be spinning 99% of the time, only occasionally stopping to cast Void Cleave and Volatile Reversal to take out troublesome elites or bosses. Gear wise, we make heavy use of uniques that drop from the Shade of Oribus boss. This is the boss within the timelines once you get to the end of the web. The uniques in question that we would be using would be Apathy's Maw, Shattered Chains and Siphon of Anguish, and this particular set of uniques lets us get a nice damage boost via an ailment called Doom. The echo element of this build comes from both our Void Cleave attacks and our Warpath attacks, so with this you'll constantly be spinning Warpath, meaning you'll be leaving behind echoes of yourself that actually spin Warpath as well, and they'll take out any trash mobs that you pass by, so you can just zip through the levels with this. To increase our damage on stronger single targets, we make use of an ailment called Time Rot, and we use this to increase our Warpath damage by 180% more damage, which is just absolutely huge. This build is probably my favourite lazy farming build, and all the required uniques are easy to farm, so personally I would say that it is a fantastic endgame build for new players. For this gear section here then, we'll use the awesome build planner and Last Epoch tools. Now the gear and the affixes I'll show off will be the perfect ones that you are aiming for, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. However, alongside this I'll put a link to my live build as well. It's not far off this, but it's not as perfect as this, and ultimately you want to see the perfect affixes that you are aiming for. The first slot that we look at here anyway, it's the helmet. This is a new base item. This is great. It gives you increased echo damage when a skill is echoed, so that's fantastic for us. For each of the regular items I'll add one exalted modifier to them as well, so this is really what you want to prioritise on your setup for this particular slot. In this instance it would be increased echo damage when a skill is echoed. After that I would go for health, cold resistance and also increased health. For the amulet slot here we use Oracle Amulet. It gives us up to 20% less damage over time. There's not many places we can get this, so it's nice to get it here. We also have Void Penetration. We don't have that anywhere else in our kit. Our exalted effects would be increased damage while channeling, that's up to 140%, and then we've got some flat health and also chance to apply frailty on hit. You can get this either on your amulet or your relic, so it's up to you which one you get it on, but you want to have this. With 3 stacks of this on an enemy, they'll do 18% less damage to you. The body armour we use here is another new base item. It's got a whopping 513 armour on it, and also implicit wise it's got increased echo damage when a skill is echoed. Our exalted effects I would look for is increased echo damage when a skill is echoed up to 330%. You can also get some additional levels to Warpath here. You can get some flat health, and we're going for, down the bottom, armour and reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes. We're going for that over critical strike avoidance. We have our first unique item here. All of the uniques in this build will drop from the Shade of Oribus. You just have to increase your corruption for some of them in order to drop, but you'll see at the bottom of the tooltip it actually tells you what your corruption needs to be. But it's a two-handed axe, it's Apathy's Maw, With each of the uniques I show off in these builds, there'll be one legendary effects added onto them because they're not too hard to get. So the one that you would want to add on here is a flat up to 18% melee critical strike chance. With this and this build and a few other multipliers, you won't be far off getting 100% crit rate, which is amazing. So you can also see this has got a ton of melee damage and also melee void damage. They're flat amounts, so they really do add up. On top of that, it's got a chance to apply Doom. Doom can have a maximum of 4 stacks. That will give you an increased 16% damage. However, that is an item we're going to look at in just a moment, that when you've got 4 stacks of Doom, it also gives you 20% more damage. More is your amazing damage multiplier. It multiplies after everything else has been calculated. We have some survivability here via the ring. The implicit here is up to 6 vitality. We then have increased critical strike chance, increased void damage, physical resistance, and also endurance. Endurance you'll be aiming to get as close to 60% as you can. For the belt here, we use the Shattered Chains, once again dropping from the Shade of Oribris. Your legendary effects you would want to add on would be Hybrid Health. This is an amazing defensive effect. It's also available on your boots and your gloves. Always keep an eye out for that. But with this belt, you'll get increased armor, increased melee void damage, and you can see this offers the 5% more melee damage per stack of Doom. So 4 stacks of Doom means 20% more melee damage, and that's multiplying after all the other multipliers have kicked in. We have our final unique here. This is Siphon of Anguish. You would go for increased critical strike chance when you're adding on a legendary effects. With this, you will get a percentage of the damage you do is melee and also void damage. You'll leech it back as health, so it's great for survivability, and it also gives you increased movement speed as well, this ring. We have another new base item here for the gloves. This is the Eternal Gauntlet, so you can see this gives up to 24% of armor mitigation, also applies to damage over time, so this is amazing. In regards to your modifiers, we've got increased melee attack speed, melee damage leached as health, you've got hybrid health that we spoke about a moment ago, and you get chance to shred armor on hit as well. When you're shredding the enemy's defences, you will do a lot more damage to them. Another new base item here as well, actually, we've got Citadel Boots. So the implicit that's really nice on this is the reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes. Our modifiers, you want increased movement speed, we want strength, we've got hybrid health as our exalted effects, and then we've got flat health added in there as well. The final gear slot we have is the Dread Banner and the Relic slot. So the base implicit here is increased void damage, perfect for us. You've then got modifiers of increased critical strike chance, that helps you get towards that 100% chance. You've then got increased critical damage while channeling, endurance, and this one here is really nice. It's up to 22% to all resistances while channeling. So that is the gear. Let's look at the blessings now. For the blessings here, we start off with the Black Sun. You can get up to 100% increased void damage. We have End in the Storm. Nothing really fits that well for our build, so we go for the increased health regen and the flat health regen. We then have the Reign of Dragons. We go for up to 20% to all resistances. We want to aim for 75% with them. The Age of Winter, we get up to 24% increased armour. And then finishing up the blessings, we have Spirit of Fire, and it can give you up to a huge 650 armour whilst you're channeling. And once again, you're going to be channeling 99% of the time. But let's have a look at the idols now. For the idols, you would want to use 3 Grand Solar idols, so these give you increased warpath area. Max rolls with 3 of them would be up to 60% increased area, and you also want chance to apply Time Rot on hit. The reason being, we talked about earlier on, with 12 stacks of Time Rot, your warpath damage will go up by 180% more, so that's why this is really nice here. We have 2 of this particular idol. It gives you increased melee damage if you've echoed recently, and also a chance to shred armour on melee hit. And then finally, we've got a few spaces left here, so we want to pull up our resistances a little bit. With the setup I was running, lightning would have been a little bit on the lower side, so we're using that there, but of course you would drop in whatever would actually work for you there. But that is all the gear. Let's go in now and let's have a look at the passive tree. For the passive tree breakdown here, then we've actually got the build planner with the full progression all loaded in, so you can see from point 1 to point 113 how I actually allocate the points, but to quickly run over the nodes and let you know why I've used them. So we're getting strength from here, that's fantastic for us. We're getting vitality from this particular one, and then this one here we're getting armor, but most importantly we're getting 10% reduced damage taken from nearby enemies. With the Void Knight tree here, our first 5 points give us an additional 10 void damage, nice to start off with. We then have some survivability here, this is melee and void damage leached as health. 1 point wonder here, 1 point in this gives us 93% critical multiplier, and because we're running a build where we're aiming to get 100% crit rate, then this is just incredible for 1 point. We have 8 points going in here for a flat 24 melee void damage, that's a real decent amount. The 5 points we have here means that when we're channeling our warpath and then we use our void cleave, it should be getting 150% additional damage as long as we've been channeling our warpath for at least 3 seconds. Then have Doom Knight, so that's strength and health, so that's great. We have Rot Ripples, this one increases our time rot duration. As we mentioned, you want to get the full 12 stacks of time rot for your 180% more damage from warpath, so that really helps out with that. We have 4 points going into this node here, so we can then get to singular purpose. It gives us increased void damage 100%, reduces our block chance, but that doesn't matter, we don't have block in our kit at all. We then have Rot Grip, so it's 50% chance on melee hit to apply a stack of time rot. That helps us get up to the 12 stacks. Up here it's all about the echoes, so with the full 5 points in here it's 10% echo chance. We have 10 points going in here for increased attack speed, time rot chance and echo chance, all fantastic for us. 1 point into here for an additional echo chance. It does pull down our attack speed, but it is worthwhile going for. We have 15 points into Dread, it gives us increased void damage and move speed. And then we actually have this one here that I almost missed. We've got Eternal Form, it's an additional 10 vitality and 20% health as well. So that is the passive tree. Let's look at the skill trees now. The first skill we look at is the one we are using 99% of the time with this setup, so it is of course Warpath. 2 points into Unchained and 1 point into Reckless Spin means that Warpath doesn't cost any mana at all, so we can just hold the button down. 3 points into here gives you an additional 30% move speed. We have 5 points into here, this has doubled the damage you see on screen with a two-handed weapon, so it actually gives us 50 flat melee void damage. That's a huge amount of damage. We have 1 point into Echo Knight, it allows Warpath to echo, so this of course is vital. This one here, Apocalypse Whirl, it changes Warpath from a physical skill into a void one. Also gives us a 30% time rot chance, and it converts any bleed and ignite into time rot. So just bear that in mind. If you're struggling to get your 12 stacks of time rot, you can use bleed or ignite to get there. In regards to your 12 stacks, it's all about this here, Mote of the Deep. So you can see with this, your hit damage per stack of time rot is 15%. It's a more multiplier, and again, you've got up to 12 stacks of it. So 12 times 15, 180. Amazing. We've then got a few nodes over here, so the main reason I put a point into this really is so I can get to the end of this particular tree, but the bonuses you get from here are nice. You've got some extra area, extra damage, and then we use this here Dark Nexus, just the 1 point in this. This means when we're spinning, occasionally when we cast Void Cleave, of course, your mana will continually go down. It won't be generating while you're using Warpath. So with this, it allows you to continually cast your Warpath and use Void Cleave on occasion as well without running out of mana. The next skill we have is Rebuke. I would say this probably isn't mandatory, but I really do like it because if you mess up and you're not able to move out a one-shot attack, you can just hold down Rebuke, and in most instances you'll be able to tank it. So we've got some extra duration here. Put some points into this node to allow us to go further along the tree. So we've got elemental damage taken reduced by 60% when we're channeling, and 75% increased armor. Up here we are pulling down the cooldown recovery speed on Rebuke, the reason being that increased the actual cooldown on it with patch 1.0. So we actually used this here, Retaliation, and also Reclaimed Refuge, so we can get a higher uptime on our Rebuke. Our next skill is Volatile Reversal. I won't use this often, but if I'm fighting a boss or an elite that's got a ton of health, I'll cast this, then I'll cast Void Cleave, and you'll do so much damage. This has a lot of damage buffs it will provide you with. So you've got the Void Rift on arrival, you've got additional damage here based on the stacks of Time Rot. We then put points into this one here so we can get over here, which the enemy takes 30% more damage when they're affected by a Void Rift. And then at this side we've got an additional Void Rift. This is when you actually start the skill. We've got some more damage here, and then we've got additional damage over time getting taken because we're going for the full 12 stacks of Time Rot and 4 stacks of Doom. Some additional damage over time is nice, and then our last 2 points would go into here just so we can use it more often. We then have Void Cleave, and once again how this works is when you're fighting a boss or an elite with a ton of health, you'll smack them with your Volatile Reversal first, and then you'll follow up with Void Cleave. You do an insane amount of damage. So with this we're putting points into here for the damage in the area, but we really want to put points in so we can work our way along to here. So after channeling Warpath for at least 2 seconds, your next Void Cleave within 1 second deals more damage. That's 80% more damage. We then have a point into this node here. It's giving us increased crit chance, but we're doing it so we can go down the left and right of this tree. At the left here, when you use Void Cleave, it will apply crit vulnerability stacks, making it easier to crit an enemy, and also Void Cleave will have an additional 150% crit chance, so you're very likely to crit with it with the setup we're running. It's got an additional 200% crit multiplier here, which is amazing. And then along this side here you've got Crushing Echo, so Void Cleave deals additional melee void damage, and effect is tripled for echoed Void Cleave. So if your Void Cleave echoes, you're actually getting, what is that, 225 additional base damage on it, which is just bonkers. It just hits so hard. The final skill we have here is Anomaly. We have this on auto cast, so we have 4 points into this node here that allows us 1 point into borrowed time, which means the skill is instant cast. So when you're channeling Warpath and you auto cast Anomaly, it won't break you out the animation for that. Heading down this side of the tree here, we have 1 point into Void Touch, 1 point into Immediacy. That stops enemies from disappearing when you use Anomaly, because it can be a bit of a pain. The main reason we use Anomaly is for the time bubble that it places on you. With this time bubble, when enemies come within it, they're slowed and their void resistance is shredded as well. Now, 4 points in here means the time bubble lasts longer. 1 point in here means the time bubble actually follows you about, which is amazing. Now, other bonuses you get from this, when the time bubble's on you, and we should have about 75% or so uptime on it, you get an increased 150% crit chance, and you also get 20% attack speed as well. So that is the SPIN2WIN Echo Void. Now, as mentioned earlier on, it's probably my favourite endgame build. It's great if you're looking for a lazy build. It's really not too bad to itemise for as well, and damage and survivability wise, it does amazingly well. Now, let me know in the comments below what other endgame guide videos you would like to see, because I do have all the masteries up at 200 corruption at the moment, so if you want to see a guide, I can put it out easy enough there. But yeah, let me know, and if the video has been helpful, please do take time to hit the like button and hit subscribe as well if you've not done so already. But thanks for tuning in, see you all again soon.